Hello, everybody. Welcome to Self Publishing Insiders. We're in for a treat today because my guest is Alessandra Torre. Welcome, Alessandra.
Hi, Jim. It's so great to be here. I'm so excited. I love this topic. I love y'all's show. So thank you for having me as a guest.
Well, we've been looking forward to this one for a long time. For those of you who don't know Alessandra, she is a multiple New York Times best-selling author with more than 2 million books sold.
Woohoo!
That's amazing. Woo! I feel like I should have had some confetti.
Confetti or something. Yeah.
But you write romance under Alessandra Torre, Torre, right? And you write domestic suspense under AR Torre.
Yes. Yeah. So I lived two lives, and I started in romance and then transitioned to suspense about 6 years ago. So I haven't written a romance novel in quite some time, but I still maintain both backlists, and stay in both worlds.
Okay. Well, we were talking backstage. We've got a lot to talk about. So we are going to talk about the 5 things every indie author should know. We're going to try to get through all those tips, and I can't wait to hear them. And then from there, we're going to talk about InkersCon, because you are the co-founder of this amazing conference called InkersCon that happens every year. So we're going to talk about
and it's right around the corner. Yeah, InkersCon launches in a week. June 7th. So it's perfect timing. Yeah, and I could have written, I think, 20 things every indie author should know, but I narrowed it down to 5. I think they're good ones. So yeah, so I'm excited.
Okay. Before we even get into that, I want to ask you, because you've been doing this for a while now. You've been extremely successful. So I want to ask you, like, what compels you? Like, what drives you to help out your fellow authors, especially those who are newer, or maybe they haven't even published a book yet, they're aspiring, and you've done it and you've been successful, but you've been doing author education now for several years. So what drives you to keep going with the author education aspect of it? Because I'm sure your author life has got you pretty busy.
My author life has got me busy. I started in this business in 2012. And back then there was little to no author education at all. We had conferences, but they were all traditionally publishing conferences. So I did attend RT back in the day, 2012. It's not around anymore, but if you went online and tried to find some information about book marketing, it was all first of all, traditionally published and traditional publishing. And there just wasn't anything. I remember in 2013 and 14 when we discovered like Facebook ads, and Facebook ads were a gold mine because nobody was doing them, at least not, in the book world. So I remember thinking, so what happened is, for my first few years, it really was me like I was blind. Like I would just wander in a direction until I hit a wall, and then I would turn, and then I would wander in a new direction until I hit a wall. And it was like, if I ever figure this thing out, like I wanted to create like a writing for dummies and book marketing for dummies type of course. And so initially I started with like courses that I taught myself. And then it was quickly like, okay, well, I've exhausted what I know. And then now I want to learn from those who know, audiobook marketing or something that I don't have any knowledge in. And so I really started looking outside, and that's where InkersCon came into play. It was like, okay, well, how can I, as an author and my students, learn from 20 experts in all of their different like fields? And that was really where InkersCon was born, and InkersCon is today. So, to answer your question of like, why I do it, it's very, I don't want to say it's selfish, but I get as much out of it as I give, because one, I'm deadline motivated. I would never finish a book if I didn't have like a deadline, and an editor and, a publisher like screaming at me. And education's the same way. Like I could enroll in a dozen courses, or I could, sign up for things, but I'm not actually going to study that topic until I'm in a situation where I need to. And so me educating allows me to be like, okay, I have to become an expert on this topic. So it really helps me. And then we watch every presentation of InkersCon and edit it before it, is delivered to attendees. So I learn each year. It's like, I have 24 classes in all of the important things. So it really helps my own career and my own education just as much.
That's what an answer. Uh, yeah, you guys are so professional and you're so on it and you have just amazing guests. Like every year, I'm like, oh my God, look at this.
We have a great lineup. That's not, I mean, we have a great lineup and a great community. And the two things work well together because I think the speakers love being there and they get such a warm reception from the audience. And then the audience educates each other so much. Like our first year, we started attendee-led roundtables, and we weren't sure how it was going to go, but it was like, oh, we have attendees that know something. It might just be like, I'm really great at spreadsheets, or something like that. Or I, have a background in forensic science and I'm, willing to share my knowledge or answer questions. And so we started these like live attendee-led discussions. And some years we have over 100 of them. Like they just go bonkers. And again, that's all the author attendees giving back, and participating. And of course, it's all optional. But it's just amazing how much like they'll rally. Yeah.
That's why I love my job so much in this community. And I've mentioned it here before, but I feel like the indie author community has kind of evolved into its own culture where everyone just sees what everybody else is doing. But those who are more experienced, they reach out and they try to help the newer authors learn as much as they can, as fast as they can, so they don't make the same mistakes that those who have already been through it have made. So
yeah, that's a good point. And we, our industry gets a lot of times like there's highlights on the bad actors, right? But for the most part, our community is pretty amazing, given the fact that we're all like competing. I mean, I'm firmly believe there's enough authors, readers for all of us, but considering we're all in the same industry and, and sharing the same readers.
Or even the same genre.
Yeah, in the same genre, it's amazing how much just, support there is and transparency. And I think transparency is really important in our industry. The more that we can share, even if the more I can share something that didn't work for me is just as helpful to another author as sharing something that did work for me.
Oh, totally. So, yeah. Like when you hear about the mistakes that other authors have made, especially those who are successful like you, they're like, but I made these mistakes. You're like, oh, really? You mean I'm human?
Yeah. And then maybe they won't make that mistake. You know what I mean? So they're one step smarter.
Yeah. All right. Well, I told you I was going to keep going and chatting with you and learning about your background. So, okay. So that's the foundation. So for any of you out there who are watching this or listening and you're like, oh, I'm not sure if I want to self-publish. I hope just from that short bit, you've kind of learned that your tribe is here. We're here for you. We're going to try to help you. And so with that, shall we hop into the 5 things that every indie author should know?
Yes, absolutely. And just for those listening, just so you know, just like a quick 5-sentence background on me. I started in self-publishing. I had enormous success in self-publishing. I hit the New York Times list multiple times with self-published books. And then, and I did sign traditional contracts along the way. So I am hybrid. I can answer your questions on both sides of that. And now my last few books have been with Thomas & Mercer, which is an Amazon publishing and print. So it is traditional publishing. So my more recent AR Torre books are with them. I came with 5 things every indie author should know. If you are traditionally published, this is also a lot of times can go to you as well. But the first thing is to understand kind of why you're here. Like, why are you here sitting, listening to me? Why are you writing a book? Why are you wanting to become a novelist, or a nonfiction author? Why are you here? And there's typically 3 reasons. It's either like I want to be a full-time author and that is my goal and that's going to be my career moving forward, right? Second path is this is a side hustle for me, for lack of a better term. This is a supplemental part of my life that brings me joy, but I need to make a certain amount of money from it. It might be enough money for a car payment. It might be enough money just to recoup the cost that you're putting into it, but I need to make something, a certain amount out of this career. And then the third is I love to write and it is a hobby for me and I enjoy doing it. Just the same as like I play tennis or I, do yoga or whatever else, I write. So the earlier you can decide like which of those 3 paths, and I gotta tell you the easiest, most fun is I am a hobby, right? Like this is a hobby and there is nothing wrong with that path. It is a fantastic path. But that means that the time you spend should be in helping improve your storytelling, right? Like you want your story to reach nuts, but also having fun, going to author conferences and doing like the networking events, but enjoying reading in your genre. Like that's what you don't really need to waste your time necessarily in business and marketing and advertising classes and that sort of thing. Like focus your time on what brings you joy. If this is a side hustle, but it needs to make money, then I would focus on, low, high conversion activities, like things that don't cost a ton of money, but will bring new readers to you, really minimizing your expenses, and maximizing like your profit activities, that sort of thing. And if this is a full-time career for you, like you need to have a business plan, you need to have short-term and long-term goals. You need to be like, setting yourself up for success, creating as big of a backlist as possible. But that, I just want to tell you, as a full-time author, there is a big difference in writing a book and being like, I really need this book to be successful, and having the mindset, if this book isn't successful, like I'm not gonna be able to pay my mortgage or my rent or my bills, my family's gonna go hungry. It puts an entirely different pressure on your writing, your career. And it's not like this great thing that everybody thinks it might be. Like it is a very pressureful situation, which oftentimes isn't the best creative environment to write in. So just know that sometimes the perfect scenario isn't the perfect scenario, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah, it makes perfect sense. And it's an excellent foundation, knowing that there are 3 different paths depending on where you are in your author journey.
Yeah. And based on your path, why you identify it, so you can decide how to use your resources, your time and your money, right? Like what are you going to invest in terms of education and products for you and advertising or that sort of thing? And what are you going to do your time? Like, what are you going to spend your time learning about and growing in, and what connections are you making? And, how do you segment your time accordingly? And again, if you know your path, then you know that. So that's number 1.
Perfect. And we often don't budget our time as a finite resource that it is.
Yeah. It's one of our most valuable resources, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, because that's taking away time from our family and our kids and our other jobs and our relationships and things like that. So you want to make sure like it's bringing you joy and that it's accomplishing whatever your purpose is for being there. So.
Perfect. Okay.
All right. So that was number 1. Number 2 is that every book has a lifetime ahead of it. So it's really easy. And I have been so guilty of this. I had a release that bombed, and I remember sobbing on the couch because I was convinced that my author career was over, that no one was ever going to read me again, and that this book was a failure. And I just spent like 6 months of my life on this book, and this was back when I was, it was my full-time job. So it was also like, my alarm at the financial situation. And I remember my husband came in and he was like, he knows nothing about publishing, about anything, but he said this one gem of brilliance, which was like, he said, you were going to earn money on that book for the rest of your life and our life and our kids' lives. He's like, you look at this like it's a long-term thing. Like this is just, and he was right. And there are books that I wrote, 10 years ago that flopped, and I have successes that I wrote 10 years ago that still earn me money every month. And you never know when your book might take off. A lot of the big books that have gone viral on TikTok or that have been, Handmaid's Tale, that suddenly like came back into, or caught the public's attention are older books. And there might be a time where whatever quirky sub genre your book is suddenly becomes the next hot thing, and it flies off the shelf like hotcakes, So even if, again, it doesn't have to be a mammoth bestseller, but this could be a slow and steady earner for you for the rest of your life. So you just want to, don't give up on your book if it doesn't immediately take off. Always look at your backlist, see how you can improve, see if maybe it needs a new cover or new book description, or just a refresh. Read your reviews. If everybody complains that the first half is slow and sluggish, rewrite the first half, trim it down, cut some scenes, make it snappier. And don't worry about sometimes cutting your losses and moving on. Like write another book. Every book we write, we get better.
All right. Perfect. I love that advice.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. So number 3, is to determine your lane as early as possible. And by lane, I really mean like your brand and what you as an author are going to be known for. And if you're watching this and maybe you've written 1 or 2 books, like I'm really kind of talking more for the authors that are going to write 8 books or more, so, and sometimes it takes a while to figure out what type of books like you want to be known for. But when you think about these huge bestsellers, right? When you think about Daniel Steele, when you think about Stephen King, when you think about John Grisham, you know kind of what to expect when you pick up their book. You're going to have a certain experience. You're going to have a certain flow and writing style and cadence. And if this is a book that's going to make you happy, if it's going to make you scared, if it's going to be a book full of twists and turns, or whatever it is. And so the earlier you can determine like what kind of book you want to write, then you need to write those type of books consistently. And Melanie Harlow, who is a #1 Amazon bestselling author, she writes romance. She spoke at InkersCon in the past about, she says she writes cupcake. Like her book is like a cupcake. It's sweet and happy and tastes the same way every time. Doesn't matter what type of book you pick up, it's going to taste like that. And she says, and sometimes she wakes up in the morning, she doesn't want to write cupcake. She wants to write spaghetti. Like she has this great idea, or she wants to take her book in a new direction, and it's going to be spaghetti. And she goes, and I tell myself, no, like I can't, because I could write spaghetti and I could publish spaghetti, but it's going to completely derail the upward trajectory that my career is taking. You know what I mean? And it's going to throw my readers off, and it's going to cause distrust, and it's going to cause the next time I publish a book for them to go, is this going to be spaghetti or a cupcake? And that's not good for her. So she said, so that is, and very much early in my career, I wrote whatever I wanted to write. You know what I mean? I wrote whatever I felt like writing. And that is great if your path is hobby. If your path is, I write for joy and I just want to write as many stories as possible. Sorry, my dog is barking.
That's all right.
But if you...
That's the Frenchie, I'm assuming.
That's the Frenchie, yeah. If you need to make money off of this, if you need to make a career out of this, then you need to identify as early as possible what you're known for. And then you need to write that type of story over and over and over again, and understand that that's a business decision. And that any variation from that is going to potentially derail your success. All that said, early in your career, you're not going to know necessarily. You might have to write a werewolf, fantasy, and then a military science fiction, and then, a legal thriller before you figure out like, oh, this is what I want to write. So there's nothing wrong with like exploring different genres, figuring out your voice and that sort of thing. And sometimes that takes a couple of books before you figure that out. But once you find something that works, then the smart thing to do, is to stick there.
Okay, there's a lot of wisdom in that. And you've already answered my question that I was going to ask you, which was going to be, what do you say to those authors who may come to you and ask, I feel like I can write in any genre, but I want to write toward market. I want to write toward, what the trend is right now. For those authors, would you tell them, okay, you can kind of play around with that, you can experiment with that, but eventually you're going to have to put some guardrails up and focus on a genre of choice?
Yeah. So writing to market is, in fact, I think I'll go ahead to the next, I'll skip to #5, which is, which talks about writing to market. And that rule is really like, know what your target readers want. So writing to market is a term you hear a lot in our industry. And I misunderstood the term for a really long time. I thought that meant that right now, gargoyle, thrillers are all the rage. So I should write a gargoyle thriller because that's what's selling right now. That is what I thought writing to market was. Okay. And I hated the concept as a writer, because I was like, oh, you're just following the money and where is the joy, blah, 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 blah. I was very high up on my soapbox, Now how I understand writing to market, and I believe that I am correct in this, is that writing to market is understanding the book that you are writing and what it is that readers love about that book, and then writing that type of story. So if what you're wanting to write is a is a paranormal fantasy romance. Or let me go to an easier example. If what you're wanting to write is a stepdad romance, because maybe stepdad romances are popular, or because you have an idea for a stepdad romance, and so that's what you're going to write, then it's knowing, why do readers love stepdad romances? And it's not just because there's a stepdad. It's because like they love seeing the bond that grows between their child and this father. And they love these specific type of scenes that show that happening, or the first moment, or they love, seeing the hard facade crumble, or whatever it is. Like there's a reason that they love that story. And it's not just, you just don't stick a stepdad like label on somebody and then it's done. You have to really understand what it is and then deliver on those expectations. So one of my things, like words of wisdom that I was going to share today, is like, whatever book you're writing, really understand early on before you start to write it. Like, and if you're a pantser like me, it's harder. But as soon as you understand, like, oh, this is going to be this type of book and it's going to appeal to these type of readers, really understand what it is. If it's not a genre that you are in, a subgenre that you are intimately familiar with, learn what it is about that subgenre that people love. And you can find that out by reading reviews of popular books, seeing what is mentioned over and over again by the readers of the 5-star reviews. Read the 1-star reviews and find out what maybe they missed the mark on, and then write that type of book. Because if you're going to all the trouble to write this type of book, do it right. And so that's understanding really genre expectations, tropes of that book, and that sort of thing. So to answer your question, which I have wandered way far away from.
No, this is great.
Someone's like, oh, I want to write this type of book because this is really hot right now, but it is outside of my current brand. I would ask, if I was like sitting down with that author, I'd be like, okay, why do you want to write that type of book? Is it because you have this like burning, amazing idea for that type of book and you think it would, and you want to tell that story? And if so, then as long as you know why you're breaking the rule, which the rule is like, this is my lane, this is my brand, and I'm going to write as many books as I can inside that brand. As long as you are prepared for that book to not be as successful, or, to potentially alienate your readers, it's okay to go outside that. You just need to know the potential effects of that and head them off best you can. Communicate with your readers. Let them know you're writing something that is a little outside of your thing, but you love this story. Please share it with their friends who might like this type of story, that sort of thing. Very clearly communicate that. And then, and ideally that's a book. The other question to ask yourself is this a type of book I could write more of? And if it's not, if this is a one book and you're not going to want to write in that genre anymore after that, I would really strongly urge them not to do it, just because it is a huge time commitment writing a book. But if it is something where they could potentially see a future, and if it took off, then go for it, because that might be what you end up becoming known for and you build a whole career off of.
Great advice. Great advice. So I took you kind of out of order a little bit.
Yeah, but we're doing good, and we're doing good on time. So the last one, so the last one, which was number 4, now did number 5, is that marketing can't sell a bad product. So a lot of times authors go to the sexy stuff, and the sexy stuff is like how to sell 10,000 copies of your book, and how to grow an audience of 1 million readers, and blah, blah, blah. How to get reviews and how to do this. And there's so much great education in the marketing and advertising front and business front. But a lot of times, and I see it, InkersCon, we have 4 main areas: craft, the writing classes, we have business, we have marketing, we have advertising. Craft classes are the least watched classes. It doesn't matter if they are the greatest classes in the world. Craft classes are the least watched because authors love, what do we want? Like, we all want, millions of readers, and we want, we want our books.
And you hear about authors at conferences who say, well, we want more craft classes.
Yeah, it's fun. It's funny. They go, which I understand. Like, it doesn't mean that you hate writing or you hate whatever else, but you want your stories to be read. Like, I wrote this book. I want it to be read by somebody. So I always say, don't forget craft, because you can write a great story, and if it is written well and packaged well, it will find readers and it will be successful. But you can also, if you have a bad product, you can put a lot of money into it and you can get initial sales, but you're going to get bad reviews. You're not going to have read through, those readers aren't going to go and buy your other books. And there's not going to be any organic word of mouth on that book.
Yeah.
So really, if you only have money or time to focus on one thing, focus on writing the best book you can and learning as much as you can about how to improve the writing process. And a past Inkers Con speaker, Kyla Stone, she writes apocalyptic fiction, female-led. She said something that I loved. And every time after she finishes writing a book, she reads a book on craft. And so she reads a book on craft every time she finishes writing a book. And I just love that. Like, I love that practice. Like, it's a good palate cleanser, while she's waiting on edits back from her editor, she reads a craft book. And I just love kind of that dedication and focus to her craft. So
I think that's an excellent point, because it's still a word of mouth industry. I mean, the books that really, really take off are still taking off based on reader word of mouth. When you light a fire under the reader's like, oh my God, I have to tell my friends and family about this, or my closest 1,000 followers about this book. And that's all because of craft and how well written that book was.
Yeah. And the books that you see, TikTok has been a great thing in terms of that, in terms of organic virality of books. And a lot of those, though, are trope heavy. So a trope, for those of you who might not be familiar with the concept, is like an element of the story that is typically very genre specific, but it's like a trope would be enemies to lovers. That's a common trope. Or a trope could be stuck in an abandoned cabin overnight. That would be like a mystery trope or something like that. Or amateur sleuth. It's like, a book that has an amateur sleuth. And there is a lot of readers that tropes are there like candy. And if there's a book that has a certain trope, they are going to be interested in that book. Like, immediately you have cleared 3 hurdles and they are interested in that book. Now you just have to not screw it up, right? So I am a thriller reader at domestic suspense. I love serial killers. If it has serial killers, I'm already interested. That's, then they just have to not screw up the purchase transaction. Yeah. So a lot of the books that you do see going viral they're very cleanly defined tropes, and then they're hitting the reasons why. I love serial killer books, but there's ones that are well done and there are ones that are not. And the difference between that is what I touched on of writing to market is really hitting what that reader is looking for in an enjoyable experience.
Okay. Before we transition into Inkers Con, let's answer some questions and bring up some comments. Okay. First one here from author Tom McAuliffe. Hi, Tom. Tom asks, what was the main reason you decided to use a pen name?
So Alessandra is not my real name. Alessandra is a pen name. So is AR Torre. And when I first started self-publishing in 2012, I started writing steamy romance. My first book I wrote was a steamy romance. And I was like, no one can ever know that I'm writing this book. It was like, in my mind, it was so scandalous. And I was a very straight-laced person. And so I used a pen name because I was ashamed of that book, really, for lack of a better term. And I didn't know if it was any good. I wrote it. I read it a few times. It seemed good to me, and I published it. It wasn't edited. I had no feedback. So I thought, if this book flops, no one will ever know I wrote it. I didn't tell my family and friends. So that was why I initially decided to use a pen name. When I moved into the suspense world, the publisher, I first started self-publishing suspense, and a publisher came in and bought it after it was published. And they said, well, we want to move away from the Alessandra brand. It's too sexy romance. This is different. So they said, you have to pick a different pen name. And they suggested AX Torre, and I didn't like the X. So we went with AR Torre. So that was why. But my advice to anyone who's considering using a pen name, I say you always have to think that you are going to be the next Stephen King. And when you do become humongously, wildly famous, and successful? Do you want everyone to be able, just anyone off, be able to easily find you and your family and friends and, kidnap your children? Like that's where my mind goes, so I like the insulation of having a pen name. Doesn't mean someone can't find out my real name, but it makes it a little bit harder. And it also very much, I'm like, okay, today I'm putting on like my Alessandra cap. Like I make different decisions, like I prioritize my time differently. And then I take that cap off and I'm, a wife and a mom and everything else. So I like the distinction. I like kind of keeping my two worlds separate.
It's hard to keep those worlds separate sometimes. I
Yes.
wear multiple hats every day too. Next question from Guillaume. Hey, Guillaume. He says, how did you manage to sell 2 million copies of your fiction? And then in parentheses, he says, I would love to achieve this.
Yeah.
All right, what's the secret, Alessandra?
So first I've written a lot of books. I've written 30, I don't know how many books I've written, but I've written, I would say at least 35 books. And I've been in this industry for 13 years. So it does take time. I've had, early in my career, I had a few books. When I started out, I had a few books that hit big. They were self-published books and they just did well. But really, that was my first book. After that, I really had to start focusing on building my audience, creating a newsletter, communicating with them. And I published a lot. I published 4 books a year, 4, sometimes 5 books a year for my first 5 or 6 years. And so I was constantly giving my audience something, and the more and more books I sold, the more I put behind advertising. So Facebook ads were great for me. And I worked up to where I was spending on a release, just in full transparency, like Moonshot, which hit number 4 on the New York Times list. I spent $35,000 that week of release. So I sold probably $60,000 worth of books. So I made a profit of $25,000, but I was also I was trying to hit as high on the list as possible. And so I was trying to, I was really focused all of my marketing and sales on that one week. I saw a comment, someone went, this is Donut. So in case anybody wants to see Donut, she'll steal the show from her.
You can see why. She's adorable.
Yeah. So I started just with each book, I started spending more and more on advertising, but then I moved into, when the return wasn't there, when advertising started getting more and more expensive and I wasn't seeing a big enough profit off of my advertising spend, then I scaled back and I really said, okay, how do I write the most snackable books or the most that, that clearly appeal to a target audience as possible? And I really honed in on that. And AR Torre, where Alessandra wrote all over the place, I wrote all sorts of things. AR Torre writes domestic suspense based in rich areas of California, with rich people behaving badly. Like that's basically with a psychological aspect. I'm very niche, and I do the same type of book that will appeal to the same type of reader over and over again. And those books, a lot of that, I've had 2 books that I'm really closer to 3 million in sales, but because I've had 2 books that have sold over 500,000 copies, but they went viral on TikTok. I didn't spend any money on those advertising, but those are also published through Amazon. So I get special placement because of Amazon, so they also definitely give me a leg up.
Okay. I have kind of a follow-on question to this, Alessandra. And I know a lot of authors, and I'm sure you do too, who, they've written and published multiple books and they're just at the point where they just want to pull their hair out. Oh, that's not really happening for me, until it does. All of a sudden they start gaining traction and then their books just start to take off. So for newer authors, let's say that I'm an aspiring author and I've got my first book done and I'm just so proud of it and I want to get it out there in the world. Should I wait until I've got a couple of more books completed, or should I just go ahead and get that first book out there and kind of see what happens and then work on my next book?
I wouldn't wait. I see this a lot. I see new authors and they, especially if they have a series, and they keep they wait until they have a couple books and then they rapid release. But one, we need that kind of we need that self validation that I published a book. And it's a big learning curve for your first book, like learning self-publishing and learning all that. And you're going to get smarter and better with every book that you publish and release. So it depends on how quickly you write, but I would publish as I go. Also, because then you'll be able to see reader reactions. You'll be able to make changes. You'll be able to pivot a little bit. You could rewrite your book if you need to. So I would just go. And for those of you, there are a lot. I know so many authors that are trying so hard and they're doing all of the right things. They really are. And it just hasn't happened for them yet. And there's an author called Steph Green. And if y'all haven't had her, Jim, on the show, she's amazing. She's a blind author. She wanted to be an archaeologist. And she got a degree in archaeology, but couldn't get a job because no one would hire her. And so she ended up writing a book and then writing another book. And she just couldn't break past, no matter what she did, she never could make more than $2,000 or $3,000 a month. She just couldn't do it. Like she was just marketing her butt off. She was doing whatever. She couldn't do it. And she came to her husband after she'd written like 26 books. And she was like, I think I'm just going to find another job. Like this just isn't, it's not meant to be. And he was like, just keep going, Well, I think it was her 27th book. I'm sure I'm butchering this, but it was somewhere between 25 and 30 books. It was just the right book at the right time. She wrote Bully Romance. It went bonkers. And suddenly she was making $100,000 a year. And now she makes 7 figures a year. Wow. But she does a great talk where she says, don't give up before the miracle. Like she could have easily given up at book 20. She could have been like, you know what? I tried. I mean, she really did. She gave it her all. But she didn't.
I'm going to hunt you down for an introduction to her then.
I would love to. She's one of my favorite people in the author world. And she does author education as well. But it is a fantastic, and she's a great writer. I think her author name is Stephanie Holmes. It's either Steph Green or Steph Holmes. I don't know which one is her author name, which one is her like education name, but she's widely publicizes both names, so.
I think the author, Kristen Ashley, I think she was up in the past 20 books before she finally started to take off too. She's a romance author.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sylvia Day. I mean, she was successful, but she wasn't until 50 Shades of Grey came, and suddenly, I mean, she was right there, and she had this whole backlist.
I met her right before she started really taking off. When back in the Smashwords days in 2012, I met her at RT Book Lovers, and she was so sweet and so quiet and very humble. And I swear, it seemed like it was through the couple of years, and she was just like,
yeah. She was just. Yeah, right place, right time. And she's a great writer. I mean, she's a fantastic writer, but she was kind of undiscovered. I mean, she had a following, but yeah, she really.
I remember at that time, it was early days, and Mark Coker, Smashwords founder, is like, you watch, she's going to be one of these authors that explodes. And
yeah,
he was right.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, a couple more comments here. Told you time's going to go by fast.
I know it.
From Nigel. Thanks for the comment, Nigel. Nigel says, I love telling other writers about my mistakes. Hopefully, if we work together, we can stop constantly trying to invent the wheel on our own.
100%.
100%. Yep.
100%. Yeah. And it can be a lonely business, so it's good to make connections.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. From Tom, again, author Tom McAuliffe, who's asked, what percentage of revenue do you put back in for advertising, marketing, et cetera? You touched on this a little bit earlier.
Yeah, on my self-published books, I normally do 30%. But there were, it's easier for me to do now because I make a lot of money off of my books. Early newer authors, I was able to do that once my books started earning like enough where I could, also pay my car payment. You know what I mean? Like there are certain, so it's easy, once you hit kind of the break-even point, then it's a lot easier to put money back. So I would put back what you can afford. And early on, Catherine Cowles, Cowles, She is huge right now, but she was my student in my very first How to Write class. And so I've watched her grow. And her first 2 or 3 years, she either operated at a loss. She was publishing 4 books a year, but she either operated at a loss or made very little, if anything. But she was putting 100% back into her books. And now she's massive. I mean, I would say she makes mid 6 figures consistently. Her books are in Target. Her books, she sold the print rights to traditional publishers. And she does fantastic. But initially, because she didn't have a lot of revenue, it was all going to, and she really focused on craft and packaging, like making sure that her packaging is to market.
Yeah. Don't you love seeing your past mentees just break out?
Oh, it's amazing. Amazing. Yeah. It's the best feeling in the world.
Another comment from Osiris. Osiris, I just want to say, I've got your email. I'm so sorry I haven't replied yet. It's been nuts.
Oh, I'm not the only one who does this? Okay, good.
My God. I feel so bad, so guilty sometimes. But hey, I'm so glad you're here, Osiris. Osiris is a great guy. He says, I'm glad she said brand, because many authors get into the business and don't realize the importance of branding yourself rather than simply publishing a book. Totally agree with her Stephen King analogy as well.
Yeah, and your brand doesn't have to be, you don't have to show your face. You don't have to have this like bubbly personality and make videos, blah, blah. Your brand is your book covers and your type of stories and your marketing. Like it's your packaging. You know what I mean? It's readers going, oh, okay, I know this author, I know this, or I read this book by this author. They only have to read one book by you. And if they enjoyed it, and then they could look through your other books on your retail sales page and be like, oh, this book looks similar. You want another book that looks similar. What you don't want to do is write that gargoyle whatever, and it's like the greatest thing they've ever had, and there's no other book like that in your backlist. You know what I mean? It's so you want to have, you know, a lineup that looks similar.
Perfect. Okay. Another quick question here from Layla Rose, who asks, is it possible to bake a story in a new genre that can still get the taste right? So start fantasy, try romance, but they're both cupcake?
Yes. First of all, anything's possible. It is possible. I would ideally pick 2 genres that have high crossover. You know, I wouldn't do a middle grades and then like a steamy, you know, erotica. In fantasy and romance, a lot of fantasy will go to romance. A lot of contemporary romance won't go to fantasy. But yes, you can still do it. It's still diverting from your path. It's still not ideal, but at least like keeping the taste consistent will be good. And I've had a lot of my romance readers have gone to my thrillers. My thriller readers don't go to my romance, but because they are still getting kind of the same writing style, the same level of description or detail or lack of description and detail. You know what I mean? So they know that they like my writing. And you'll see this all the time, like, oh, I'd write a shopping list. I'm like, where were you with that one book I wrote that was totally different than everything else? Because you didn't buy that, you know? So they won't buy everything, but yeah, some of them will still follow you.
Okay. We're almost at time, so we should probably shift gears and cover Inkers Con just real quick. We covered it a little bit at the beginning, but.
Yeah, I do want to share a coupon code because you guys have a coupon code for the Draft to Digital audience, which is D2D25. Yeah, you're so on top of it. Yeah, Jim's on the ball. And just a quick, like 30 seconds on Inkers Con. Inkers Con is 100% online this year. So, and you can work at your own pace. So starting on June 7th, we have 2 weeks of live and interactive activities and events. You don't have to attend any of those if you're busy. You can always watch the recordings, but we'll have best-selling author Q&As with 8 best-selling authors. We'll have live workshops. We'll have companies like Draft to Digital will be there. BookBub will be there. So a lot of opportunities to meet with companies that you might not normally get a chance to meet with. And a ton of live events, networking events, roundtable discussions. So those will be the first, June 7th through 20th. And again, you can grab a ticket, use that coupon code, it'll save you $50. And you have 6 years of access to that material. So we have.
I was going to ask you that, 6 years of access. That's amazing.
I don't know where 6 years came from. We started off with 3 years, and then somebody, like at the 3-year mark, somebody knocked on the door and was like, could we have a little longer? We're like, yeah, sure. So it became 6 years. But the real like crown jewels, we have 24 full-length classes that are fantastic. And again, they're in craft, writing, marketing, and advertising. So those 4 areas. And those they immediately unlock on the 7th, and you can watch them. And we have 100% money back guarantee. So if you're not happy, if you don't love it, you've got 30 days. Just shoot us an email. You don't have to explain why. Just be like, hey, can I have my money back? And we'll give you your money back. So
okay. So again, you guys, anchorscon.com. Go there, check out the lineup, check out all the different topics and who the speakers are. You'll be blown away by some of the speakers. And then use the DDD25 coupon code when you check out for $50 off registration. That's pretty amazing. And you get 6 years worth of access to all that amazing content.
Yeah, and I see a comment chat. What is an author roundtable? Those are live Zoom calls where any attendee can host one. So if you are like, oh, I want to meet other cozy mystery authors, or oh, I'm in Australia and I want to meet other Australian authors. It can be like a meet and greet type, that sort of thing. Or it can be like, oh, I want to talk about Kindle Unlimited marketing strategies with other authors. So you can do a discussion like that. Or if you're an expert in a certain area, like maybe you worked in the medical field for 20 years and you want to do host a Q&A where they can ask you any medical questions, something like that. You can host something like that, or do a teaching roundtable. So
very cool. Very cool. And if people want to find you, they can hunt you down at alessandratorre.com, right?
Yeah, that's my website. And I'm on social. I'm not really active on social, but I'm on, all of the major social media platforms. But yeah, all of my books are there.
Okay. And they can link to those social media platforms, I'm assuming, from your author
Absolutely.
website.
Yeah.
As well. Okay. So we've come to a close here. We have to kind of shut down quickly. We were talking backstage before we started this that you might have your power shut off.
Yeah. I told my electricians to give me till 45 after. So far, so good. But yes, yeah.
That happened to me during an episode a couple of weeks ago where they were doing street work and it was just like zap and I was gone in the middle of the episode. No warning. But for those of you who are watching, if you could do us a favor and comment to this episode, subscribe to the channel, because that helps us spread the word and get really awesome experts in here like Alessandra to these episodes. And then why not bookmark dddlive.com, because you can see who our upcoming guests are going to be, what the topics are going to be. And finally, for those of you who may be new to self-publishing, or maybe you've been traditionally published and you've been around the block a few times, but you've got your rights reverted back to you and you're starting to learn more about self-publishing, you can sign up for a free author account simply by going to draft2digital.com. We made it. We haven't been cut off. I just
want to say I'm such a huge fan of Draft to Digital, and anyone listening, if you guys don't have a Draft to Digital account, or you're on the fence about self-publishing, or you're coming to self-publishing, it's one of the easiest ways to immediately, get your book published. I've used their other free tools that they have, but their team is fantastic. Apparently, unless, Jim's a little slow sometimes on emails, but no, they have such a fantastic
team. Man.
Yeah, they have such you gave us away with those Cyrus. They really have a fantastic team. So I'm just, they didn't tell me to say this, but I just want to say that, the author community loves Draft to Digital for a reason. So thank you guys for what you do.
Well, we love what we do, and we're big fans of yours as well. So thank you for saying that. You didn't have to. We appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for joining us.
Yeah, thanks everybody for joining us. I see some familiar names out there and some newer names too. So for those of you who are new, thanks so much for joining. I guess until next week, we will see you next time. We're going to end with a quick commercial spot on DDD Print. Alessandra, if you don't mind, hang out in the green room for a second. I'll meet you backstage and we'll chat it up a little bit more. For everybody else, we'll see you next week. Bye-bye, everybody.
Ebooks are great, but there's just something about having your words in print. Something you can hold in your hands, put on a shelf, sign for a reader. That's why we created DDD Print, a print-on-demand service that was built for you. We have free, beautiful templates to give your book a pro look, and we can even convert your ebook cover into a full wraparound cover for print. So many options for you and your books. And you can get started right now at draftedigital.com.